I believe I kept indoctrinating you through the last few videos that 1987 was the best year for C64 gaming repeatedly. And while it was an amazing one, no doubt about that, it looks like 1989 may give it a run for its money or even top it. We'll learn that soon, as we carry on with the videos for the year. But first, let's quickly summarize what overall was the state of world computing in 1989. The very first ISP started operating and servicing its customers, and it was even aptly named The World. Tim Berners-Lee submitted a proposal for a distributed system at CERN, which would later become World Wide Web as we know it today. Intel released 486DX processor with MAV coprocessor built in, over 1 million transistors and a multitasking capabilities. SQL Server was first introduced in 1989 too, and it's a backbone of most websites that we have today. Most importantly, however, as my assistant's telling me to let you know, cause otherwise he'd do it himself, is that in 1989 Tim Burton's Batman was released, and depicted his crime-fighting adventures years before he hanged down the cape and spike ears and started working for me. Anyway, world events aside, let's see what games we have to talk about for today. 3D Pinball on C64 is probably the first 3D pinball that I've ever played, and it's actually a pretty good one. Sure, it may not be comparable to the new and flashy ones we have now on PC and consoles, but it's challenging, the physics are decent, and it plays well too. It only features one table, but given the C64's capabilities and what the devs managed to pull off here, it's a wonder. A marvel really, and easily the best pinball on the system. Better than David's Midnight Magic or Night Mission Pinball. The graphics and sound design are also excellent, and overall, if you're into the genre, you'll love it. Especially that it shouldn't have worked so well in 3D on a small system as C64 was. Action Fighter is a vertically scrolling shooter. It features 5 stages and 3 vehicles that you'll be driving. At the beginning of the mission you receive a short briefing on what your main enemy for the stage will be, and you'll need to hunt him down and destroy him. That enemy is obviously at the very end of each stage, and you start on a bike that, other than the basic shot, has no other weapons and is very vulnerable. As you shoot enemies, they will occasionally drop letters when destroyed. When you manage to collect them A through D, you will be transformed into a car. Well, your bike will. Now, that is a superior machine. Perhaps not as nimble as the bike was, but can take a lot more beating. Batman's saying that before he had his Batmobile, he drove the very same one. And other than the fact that he had to replace it after each Joker chase, he was very happy with it. So there's that. The stage is circular, and you drive it until you manage to pick up letter F. This will allow you to get to the end of the stage and jump off the ramp, transforming into the airplane. And plane can do both, shoot and bomb ground targets. Whenever you see a vehicle with Sega written on top, drive or fly into it, as it will give you one of the few available power-ups. Action Fighter is eerily similar to Spy Hunter, to the point that it looks like a straight-up clone of it. It's a pretty fun game to complete once or twice, but definitely not something that you'll be playing religiously. There are 2 Afterburner games on C64. This, American one, and considerably worse, terrible, awful European release. And I know that it's a game that's difficult to port to a small 8-bit system, but sometimes it's better not to attempt something rather than do an awful job of it knowing well that you can't pull it off. That said, this US release is pretty decent. Sure, it's still not on the level of some of the ports to bigger systems, but it's playable and looks okay too. In short, Afterburner is an arcade classic forward-flying, viewed from behind the craft action shooter where you pilot FA-18 Hornet and defeat what feels like bazillions of enemies. If you can overlook small shortcomings based on how 64 hardware couldn't handle sprite scaling or floating point numbers well, this is actually a pretty fun game, even if a bit more difficult than I'd liked it to be. APB All Points Bulletin is a conversion from the arcades, and it's a pretty decent one if I say so myself. It's fast-moving, action-packed and really fun. What? You don't say. Really? Alright. So, Batman asked me to tell you that APB was his favorite game back when he used to run his Batcave out of 3 linked C64s. Or how we used to call them, Bat64s. One monitored Gotham, one processed his criminal databases, and one was dedicated to running APB. He said that he used it to practice his high-speed octane-fueled chases, and you know what? It makes sense. Cause in APB you play Officer Bob and have to apprehend criminals. A certain number of each day. A day has set number of time ticks until it's done, but you can extend it breaking the time-space continuum by eating donuts. So yeah, if you ever wondered why some cops do that, that's the reason. To perform better and work longer and harder. To catch a criminal you have to chase him down and sound your siren at them. It works for most, but some will not stop and may require a bit of convincing. Preferably in a form of brutal shoving them off-road. If one of these tougher ones confesses, you get a bonus and the day is done. You can upgrade your squad car for all the reward money that you'll get, and other than that, it's a rinse and repeat fare. But it's a fun one, so it's not too annoying to do the same thing over and over again. Epics were the masters of multi-event sports games, but since they basically ruled over the classic disciplines, other devs, like Mindscape in the case of Aussie Games, had to resort to creating new, often over-the-top unrealistic ones. And sometimes it worked. This is one of those times. Sure, it's not on the same level of quality, but it's fun, and I think that's the most important take out of it. The included games are shooting beer bottles, throwing boomerangs, boat racing without water, yeah, you heard that right, marlin fishing, bellywhacking and beach football. Aussie Games features pretty nice and detailed graphics, high quality sounds, and if that sounds like something for you, grab a friend or even better a few, and don't be a smelly flounder, show him who's the true king of Down Under. Oh my god, cringe. Batman's telling me that the game on the subject gives him creeps. It is as if he was watching his former life, his glory days, and reliving his past mistakes. And ladies and gentlemen, it's probably the first time in weeks that he actually got off my couch for other reason than go to the toilet or kitchen. He left as apparently he couldn't bear it. Well then, we can talk freely. Batman is based on Tim Burton's movie of the same title and loosely follows its plot and my assistant's former crime-fighting career. It's composed out of 5 individual stages arranged chronologically. First takes place in a chemical plant where you chase Jack Napier in an action platformer format, fighting various buddies with batarangs and eventually dropping Jack into a pool of acid, killing him and spawning Joker in the process. Fate, it seems, is not without a sense of irony. In second, Joker's chasing you around the city, and you have to escape to your Batcave in your Batmobile, avoiding various different Bat obstacles. Third stage sees you solving a Bat puzzle in your Batcave, you're figuring out which out of the cosmetics have been poisoned by the Joker with nerve agent and need to weed them out. In fourth stage you're flying Batwing during a Bat parade, cutting off Joker's floating balloons filled with deadly gas. The final stage takes place in a Bat cathedral where Joker's keeping kidnapped Vicky Vale, and you have to save her and stop him. Batman the movie is my all-time favorite 8 and 16-bit game depicting the Dark Knight, and as a movie tie-in, it's an excellent example of a game made well. To the point that this C64 version when I was a kid is what I actually dreamt of while sleeping on numerous occasions. Meaning that when I got stuck somewhere I had dreams about it, trying to figure out how to pass the point I couldn't in real life. I better shut up though, cause if my assistant hears about it, he'll be pushing my buttons all week long saying that I dreamt about him and stuff. You know, people said get Spider-Man, he's fun, he got web shooters, scrolls walls and can help you. But no, I had to get the Man-Bat cause his name sounded more epic. Battle Chess is a unique take on the classic and timeless game. Unique in a way that the board is portrayed, where each figure is actually a character, a realistic figurine. When they're moved, they walk to the tiles they directed to, and whenever a piece takes another, an animation plays out showing the battle between those two pieces. The animation is different depending on which two are engaged in combat and whichever one of them is defeating another. It's a chess game for non-chess players that either don't know all the rules by heart or want to get into the game but find the entry point just a tad too high. In the same time, Battle Chess offers thousands of different opening moves, so on a higher difficulty levels it can pose a challenge even to most seasoned chess players. Incredibly long titled Battletech The Crescent Hoax Inception is a role-playing game with tactical turn-based combat and probably the most unusually designed game for C64 in 1989. What's so unusual about it, you may wonder? Well, the game's basically divided into 3 chapters, each of having different objectives and gameplay aspects. First is sort of a tutorial-like experience accommodating you to the controls and allowing you to earn in-game currency, which you should get as much as possible as it will be crucial in latter parts of the game. It also takes place in the Citadel, where you're a cadet and are being trained in use of mechs. During one of those training missions, the Citadel is attacked and the game mode switches to the second chapter, which is more like a traditional RPG in which you travel around looking for people to join your party, finding better weapons and items to advance the plot and also partake in numerous battles. And finally, the last chapter, which starts when you find means of entry to where the game will conclude, is a series of puzzles requiring a combination of luck and logic. If you're looking for a unique RPG experience, Battletech is definitely it. Black Tiger, aka Black Dragon, because these two creatures are clearly exchangeable, is a conversion from the arcades and an action-adventure platformer. You step in the shoes of a furious barbarian, or sandals. I don't know if they were shoes, boots or sandals really. I'll have my assistant fact check it for us. Anyway, as I was saying, you're a barbarian and your ultimate goal is to find and defeat 3 dragons that invaded the Nameless Lands. So, you'll traverse through numerous stages fighting monsters and enemies on the way to them, and as you do so you'll collect coins for defeating some of the monsters and for breaking pots. This can be used to purchase armor upgrades, weapons, keys for chests and potions. And you can also find along the way a whole range of upgrades like extra time, more life and even coins themselves. Black Tiger is a game that didn't look as if it could be converted to C64, but it was. Some things suffered in the process, like sprite sizes, music design and boss fights, but overall the experience was as good as it was possible on Commodore's little system given its technical limitations and source material. Will you like it? If you enjoyed the original, you will. If you didn't, then you know the answer already. Oh, and Batman did not move an inch obviously when I asked him, so we'll never know what shoes the barbarians wore. While Blobber is definitely not a Bubble clone, they share a lot of similarities. They are both single-screen platformers, they're both hella cute, and they're both using bubbles in one way or another within their gameplay mechanics. In Blobber, you have to shoot enemies multiple times to turn them into balloons, then pop those before they revert back to the original form and collect the items that they turn into. Every now and then a diamond appears in the middle of the screen that when collected turns all bodies into items, so it's worth to keep an eye for it. All that said, regardless of which is better, this or Bubble, it's obvious from the get-go that Blobber was a very decent game that could have been much more popular if it released commercially, and not as a game disc added to a German gaming mag. Its reach because of the distribution method, despite the overwhelming piracy in the 80s, was very limited, so now it's a sort of a hidden gem. Bushido the Way of the Warrior is a C64 exclusive. It is also set in feudal Japan and depicts conflict between two rival clans and is a side-scrolling beat-em-up and adventure mix. You're sent off to infiltrate opposing clans' fortress, so you set off to do just that. But before you leave, you get to choose one of the few different characters, each with their own unique stats of strength, stealth and wisdom. It may sound pointless in a beat-em-up, but interestingly enough, not all encounters have to end up in a bloodshed. Some enemies can be avoided or even bribed to let you pass. So you explore the fortress, searching through all the rooms for useful items and money and trying to wipe the enemy clan off the face of the earth. Make sure not to ignore the search and mechanics in the heat of the battle though, as some items are actually required to progress further. Bushido is a very attractive presentation-wise and plays fine too, but requires a bit getting used to, so you have to have a patience initially to be able to enjoy it later on. There are two versions of Cabal on C64. This, 1989's European, which is just excellent if you like the genre. If not, then it's only good. An US port that came out a year later was terrible, and we're not gonna mention it at all in any of the videos in the series. Cabal originated in the arcades and is a natural evolution of year prior's Operation Wolf's formula. Same as in Operation Wolf, you're fighting what feels like thousands of enemies coming from seemingly anywhere, even small pawns in one of the stages. But unlike in the other title, in Cabal you're not just a crosshair. Sure, you still have it for aiming, but your character is also visible on the screen, at the bottom of it, viewed from behind. So this time, while annihilating legions worth of bodies, you also have to actually dodge bullets and grenades. The change of viewpoint didn't really make the game any more difficult, even though you have to avoid being shot by hand. On the flip side, a rogue grenade thrown at the screen from the side won't kill you now, as it would actually have to drop somewhere near you. And since we're on the subject of challenge, it's in a magical sweet spot, where it's not too demanding, but in the same time not so easy that you'd go through a whole game willy-nilly running around and shooting randomly. It's perfect. If there's one thing I don't like about Cabal on C64, it's that it only offers hot seat multiplayer and you can't play it simultaneously. Which is a bummer, as I really wanted to show my assistant who's real badass here. Talion Software was well known in the late 80s and early 90s for putting their own spin on genres that were already well established and defined to create something new and unique, and also often very playable. Chambers of Shaolin is no different. While it released on Amiga and Atari ST, and it shines best on these stronger platforms, Commodore's port is pretty decent too. It features very detailed, beautiful, smooth graphics, stellar sound design and novel, fun gameplay mechanics. Because Chambers of Shaolin is a versus fighting game, but not really and not at all. And yet it is. But it also isn't. I know, I sound as if I was just hit by a car, multiple times, mainly in the head, and even if I was, I still stand by what I said. The game is divided into two parts. In first, you're going through a series of 6 different tests that showcase your combat skills, specifically agility, balance, fire, speed, stick and strength. I know, fire and stick are the two obvious that don't fit. Anyway, after clearing this test, which you will, because you're a hero, you will have a chance to partake in a second part of the game, and this is a series of one-on-one fights with other Shaolin combatants. Your performance in the previous tests corresponds directly to your skills and strengths in these fights. Chambers of Shaolin is more of a technical fighter rather than the button mashing romp, so make sure to keep that in mind and don't expect the game to be full of fiery special attacks and explosive combos. If you don't mind that, check it out as you may actually like it. Remember Agar.io that was popular 5-6 years ago? Now Chomp on C64 seems to be something that inspired it. I have no way of confirming it, nor I care to do so, but the similarities are uncanny. If you don't remember, let me explain. Chomp is a game where you play as a goldfish starting its life in a bowl, and you have to eat other water-based creatures to grow, which will allow you to move to a bigger and filled with more fish aquarium. Rinse and repeat, while growing constantly until you'll be able to finally leave the house and eventually grow to the size that would allow you to reach the river. It's a dog-eat-dog, or more likely fish-eat-fish world though, so all the way through you have to avoid bigger fish, at least until you can outgrow it, cat spoons, piranhas, fishnets and a whole manner of other dangers. It's not a especially creative game, but it's a fun, simple concept that plays pretty well. And if you just want to try something completely different than any other game, there's hardly a better choice. Circus Attractions is a multi-event sports game with disciplines based on various circus adjacent acts. It can be played by 1 or 2 players, and interestingly enough, 2 players have a special versions of some of these. You can play each discipline individually, in practice mode, or as a main night show with all of them, one after another. They are quite interesting too, as they're not what you'd see in a typical Epics title. So there's juggling, which kinda explains itself and requires correctly timing your juggles to keep the balls in the air. Trampoline jumping, which coincidentally also is self-explanatory and sees you trying to jump as high as possible while pulling off tricks and somersaults. Knife throwing, and I'm beginning to notice a theme here, they all self-explain better than I ever could, but you throw knives at the spinning disc that your assistant is strapped to. I gotta ask Batman if he'd be willing, cause it sounds like a lot of fun, but it would be surprisingly difficult to attach him to a disc given how much he'd fatten up on my couch. 4th event is tightrope walking, preferably while jumping and performing various tricks for extra points. And finally, seesaw jumping, where a group of clowns alternatively jumps between the 2 seesaws and you have to direct their jumps so they would not land on the saws or each other. Fun. Circus Attractions is pretty entertaining, especially if you have a friend with you. Sadly, 2 players is the tops that it can handle in multiplayer, but I suppose if there's more of you can alternate. It's not as good of a game as Epics titles are, but you'll have a lot of fun against someone anyway. Citadel is a very slow, very technical shooter that rewards methodical, careful approach rather than quick reflexes and fast movement. On an uninhabited planet that is thought to be dead, 8 huge underground cities are detected, each consisting of 2 floors. You're given a remote-controlled 8-way shooting drone to explore them. To complete a level, you'll need to go between both city floors back and forth, deactivating beam generators that block the pathways. The game is filled with various enemies, both moving and stationary, and some of these only ever attack when you get into their vicinity or start moving within it, while others don't shoot at all and try to ram you. Pressing fire button twice and holding it after activates the probe that you can use to operate hostile drones, various switches and pick up items. Captured hostile drones follow you automatically and help. Citadel is not action-packed or crazy fast, but it doesn't mean that it's not fun. It's just different kind of fun. Cobra Force is a side-view horizontal both-way scrolling shooter. The aim of the game is to destroy numerous defenses around remote enemy bases so that they themselves could be later on destroyed by bombers. So you fly your AH-1W Super Cobra Copter doing just that. You can destroy these defense installations only by using missiles or bombs, and these are limited, so should be used smartly. In case you ever run out though, you should seek out landing pad, land on it and it will replenish your armament. Fortunately, Cobra Force is not a one-hit, one-kill game and you have a health meter. What? Come on man, it's irrelevant. It's a game, alright? Alright, I'll tell him. For whatever the reason, Batman's asking me to tell you that either of the solutions, so one-hit kill or health bar, are unrealistic, as it all depends where your craft is hit and what weapons are used against it. He doesn't seem to realize that it's a goddamn game and falls under so-called game logic where anything that the designers imagine is possible. But whatever, he's calm now, licking Cheetos dust off my couch cushion, so he should be grabbing his nap very soon and won't disturb us anymore. So as I was saying, your Cobra Copter has a health bar which can be replenished by rescuing POWs. When all enemies are eradicated, you have to go far right to the very end of the level where you'll face the boss guarding the path to the next stage. Cobra Force is fun, despite how badly I described it just now, and while definitely nowhere near the quality compared to best shooters on C64, it's worth at least a playthrough. The biggest appeal of original Continental Circus release in the arcades was its 3D mode, that used dedicated special glasses attached to the cabinet for you to experience the effect. Commodore's version does not try to replicate it in any way, and perhaps it's for the best, as bad 3D is really bad, and much more of a distraction than help. Kinda like Batman, who was supposed to be my helpful assistant, edit my videos, fix voiceovers in post, and without any cringe and silly things I would say. And he does everything but that. Mainly helps me make sure all the items in the fridge are within date and that my toilet operates correctly and flushes well. Anyway, Continental Circus is actually a pretty decent Formula 1 racer. It features 8 increasingly more difficult races in which you'll need to place better in each next than you did in previous one to progress. First track, Brazil, only requires you to be in the top 80, but while it sounds easy enough, each next track is considerably more demanding. Especially that the game is pretty unforgiving to mistakes, and any collision with another car or roadside object may actually be the difference between qualifying to the next race and game over. That said, Continental Circus in its all blocky pixelated glory is a game that rewards perseverance and practice. If you won't let the game beat you, if you won't yield to it, but will keep practicing, in time you'll be able to really enjoy it. The incredibly long-titled Count Duckula in No Sucks Please We're Egyptian is a 2D adventure platformer based on British animated TV series Count Duckula. You play a titular character and your main objective is to find and obtain a magical saxophone hidden somewhere within Pharaoh's pyramid tomb in the heart of the desert. So you'll be exploring said pyramid, solving various puzzles and collecting items that all have to be used somewhere to be able to progress further. And you can carry up to 3 of these items. While going about your treasure finding business, you'll be avoiding various dangerous creatures, falling rocks and nefarious crow brothers. Count Duckula looks great and is really smoothly animated. The sound design is pretty decent too, and since I started with the presentation, it's pretty easy to guess that something else had to be amiss. And it's the gameplay. That's, while not bad per se, it's adequate at best. You seem to be going left and right, finding items and places to use them while avoiding dangers. That's it. It's fun for a little while but grows old quick. It's a good average 5 or 6 out of 10 game. Upon its release, Cyberdyne Warrior was a C64 exclusive, and it's easily one of the best arcade platform shooters on the system. And if there's just one game out of this whole video that you should try out, it's easily the one. Once again, you're the hero. You're Cyberdyne Warrior, a space marine, not unlike more modern Master Chief, sent on a mission to search for droids on 3 planets, Geminus, Cyrus and Arius, all the while fighting off native to these creatures and avoiding other dangers. Once all the droids have been collected, you move to the next planet with its own unique creatures and an increased number of droids to collect. Time, ammo and energy all are limited, but all can be replenished by purchasing refills in the shop, 1 per planet. Shop, not purchase. So keep that in mind. Even though there's only 3 levels in the game, there's quite a lot of exploration involved. So if you're someone who likes to search for all those hidden coin caches and solve simple environmental puzzles, you'll have a time of your life. And since you'll do a lot of backtracking anyway, there'll be plenty of occasions to do just that. Remember, however, that each level is timed, so if you're feeling that you failed to find all the droids within its constraints, or you're low on health and have to navigate particularly dangerous area, it's worth to track back to the shop, replenish what's running out, and then attempt what previously felt impossible. Cyberdyne Warrior is amazing, and an excellent game for all fans of action arcade titles on C64. And if there's one thing I can find in it that should or could be improved, it's the scrolling, or lack thereof, as it's a flick screen game. But let me make that clear, it's a small speck of bad in an ocean of good. What do you think, guys? Is this first episode enough to sway you into thinking that 1989 may have been the best for C64? Or do you want to wait and see more before casting your vote? Also, any particular memorable games that you saw here today? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well then there's thumbs down there too, but I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed, and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend you the next episode or not, other than subscribing and hitting the bell, that is. And that bell is pretty amazing, as whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually send you small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content, and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as a background to my commentary. They're all amazing and stars among the retro community, and deserve your subscription. They all have mine. You'll find the names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running, and also in the video description below. Make sure to send them your love. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.